Yeah, it's not great to lose a top flight head coach. Of course, there is a loss there. Lincoln Riley goes to USC, but I think much of what is felt by the fan base isn't tangible. It's the feeling that we thought we were above that, that who would leave us for somewhere else, and it happened. That doesn't downgrade what Oklahoma is. That's just in that person's perspective, Lincoln Riley's, that he wanted more money and a different experience, and for whatever other reasons, deemed the Pac 12 to be more viable, which makes sense than the SEC to build a dynasty. Whatever his reasons, that shouldn't diminish or downgrade the Oklahoma program and the level of the coaching job just because one man determined that he would rather be somewhere else. But it's human nature to take that as a snub, as a hit. And so I think that the feelings that people were having this time last week were more connected to that than they were the reality of the situation. Yes, there was concern. Your coach just left. National Signing Day is coming up. Who's going to be the next coach? We thought we had one of the best. How do you replace him? And so those are valid concerns, but the program's in a good place. As you said, it's a 10-2 team here in 2021. It's a good team, a flawed team, but a good team.
Right.
It's a legitimate top 10 or 15 team in the nation, not as good as they were supposed to be. And now looking forward, it's going to be up to Brent Venables to maintain as much of this 2022 recruiting class as possible and move on from there. Another aspect of this, Jason, that we talked about a number of times is depending on which direction the program would go in terms of the strength of the new head coach, whether he was an offensive guy or a defensive guy, that it would be awfully important to balance that out with a strong coordinator on the other side. And of course, Jeff Lebby being the guy that ESPN and other sources are targeting as being Brent Venables' new offensive coordinator coming in from Ole Miss.
Yeah, no, I think that's the guy that I've heard, Mark, all along, that Oklahoma was either that Venables was targeting, or whoever it might be that was targeting, to your point, if it was going to be more of a defensive based hire. So I think he's still the guy, he's still the leader. I think Oklahoma has some inroads there, right? He went to school at Oklahoma. He was a grad assistant at Oklahoma. He is very, very close with he's very close with Joe John Finley, the existing tight ends coach at Oklahoma. So I think everything's a little bit of a natural fit. I think the one concern obviously is the baggage that he comes with, not necessarily him personally, but the fact that he was part of that Art Briles staff when all that happened, and he's actually married to Art Briles' daughter. I don't know if you knew that or not, but so I think that's the only pushback I think just that I've heard. So I think it'll be good for, if he ends up being the hire. Mark, I would certainly expect Oklahoma's compliance department and Joe Castiglione have done their due diligence and have done their digging. Um, if he's the guy. Now, he's a hot commodity. He's probably might be the hottest commodity from an offensive coordinator, offensive coach perspective this offseason. He's being linked to Louisiana as a potential candidate for that job. He's been linked to some other big time SEC offensive coordinator jobs. LSU. I've kind of seen some news that Brian Kelly has a strong interest in bringing him over as well. So I don't know that it necessarily would get into a bidding war, but I do think that Oklahoma has a little bit of a leg up. I've heard that he probably would prefer to go to Oklahoma than to go to go anywhere and to be a coordinator. So I think that's definitely part of the conversation, and that'll be interesting. Depends on how you view this, right? I mean, I don't know. Do you view a head coaching job wherever it is better than a coordinator job? I mean, it's just a debate that's been there. If he views, the opportunity to go to a place like Louisiana and be the head coach first over being an offensive coordinator at a place like Oklahoma or Ole Miss or even LSU, whoever that is. So I think that's one area. I think the other area that's kind of gained a little bit of steam this late this morning, early this afternoon is potentially Joe Brady, since he was let go from Carolina earlier this. I think it was I don't know if it was before the game or after the game, but at some point today, he was relieved of his offensive coordinator duties um, you know at Carolina. So that was a name previously that was linked to Oklahoma if Matt Rule was potentially coming to Oklahoma. So I think that's one area to think of. I don't know that Oklahoma has the pocketbooks to be able to do this. But there was some thought that potentially Brady could come over to Oklahoma in a very similar manner that where he was at LSU as the passing game coordinator. So don't know that Oklahoma would be able to do that, but I think those are the two names, the most prominent names that I've heard. Kendall Briles is another name that I've heard potentially would be a guy that's part of the mix. I think and Graham Harrell's another one. So that's really the extent of the names, but certainly Lebby is the odds-on favorite at this point.